Hi guys. Yeah. So, whoever doesn't know who I am, my name is Carol. My husband's name is Bert. We have our main channel, which is RV Butterfly. We do a lot of unboxings on there of different merchandise from ThredUp and American Thrift Supply, News Source, which used to be Help See Source. And about 6 months ago, maybe not that long, Bart was diagnosed with dementia. And that changed our life a lot. But that's not what this video is about. I just wanted to give you a background on us in case you haven't seen us before. So we have 3 channels. RV Butterfly, which is the reselling channel mainly. But if I find something interesting that I put on my over 50 channel or my Dear RV Butterfly channel, then I usually will put it on there. However, today I wanted to talk about something that's getting a lot of, I don't know, this is not a political channel, so I want to get that off my chest right away. I grew up on a poor side of Chicago, Illinois. And it was in Uptown. My mom had schizophrenia. My dad left her when I was 6 years old because he didn't want to deal with it. So technically, I raised my mom when she got worse. But until she did, she worked at a little job called Daily Pay. And she made, I think, $10 a day, something like that. She never got child support. So it was very hard on all of us, and you know, I understand what it is to need some help from somebody. But yet my mom would not go get any. She always believed that her family made it through the Depression and that as long as she worked, she would be okay. Well, after several years, she got worse. I got to be a teenager, which was crazy anyway, and I could sit here all day long and tell you about that. So, but we're not going to do that. Today what we're talking about is Social Security, the money that people get, the money they don't get, how people comprehend what being broke really means. Because so many people have different ways of explaining how they are broke. For example, some will say, oh, I'm broke, I can't go to Disneyland. Or I am broke, I can't go to the zoo. I want to take my kids here, I want to take my kids there, but I don't have the money to do it. And then other people will say, I am so broke that I don't have dinner for my kids. I'm so broke that I have to go to the church down the street and see if they will help us out with groceries. If we're lucky, they'll have some. Okay, so a lot of people do that. And once or twice as an adult, I had to do it because I didn't get child support either. And I was raising 5 kids. However, I did work. And I'm not making myself out to be any better than anybody else. But I just wanted to explain to some people, I hear people talking about, yeah, there is a lot of people out there that could probably get a job and they could probably get off assistance and stuff like that. But some of these people are technically raised on that system. Years and years ago, I'm only 68, but years and years ago, we had a lot of parents who, they thought it was embarrassing to be getting help and this and that. And that was terrible because people need help, they need help. That's the way I feel. And then there was other people who, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they started having kids. They would have kids one right after another, and they were on public assistance, and they would get Foodstamps, Medicaid, and stuff, and got so used to being like that that when the kids were old enough, their kids were old enough to go to school, they did not want to work. They had no initiative to go to work. Now, I'm going to get probably a couple of hate mails, but that's okay. I have broad shoulders. I just wanted to say that when people say they're broke, a lot of people, I know a lot of people have helped people who were not broke, and they would say they were, so they would get money and they would go buy beer, booze, then it became beer, booze, and drugs and all that. So we have all that mix in the world. It's very, very hard to decipher who really needs assistance and who don't. And especially outside of the family or outside of your community, because your community knows what you're going through. They know, because like when I was a kid, I was eating with my friends. When they had food, I was over there eating with them. When we had food, they were over there eating with us. And when I said food, I'm talking about an RC and a can of ravioli. That was my meal for the day, if I was lucky. She had me and my brother. And by paying the bills and the rent and everything else, she was like one of the people that should have gotten food stamps, but she never did. And even I didn't. And that's a whole other story we're going to get to. But it all kind of ate at me watching these things on TV of people who feel that they're entitled to food stamps, okay? It's not their fault because, and it's not, it really isn't. A lot of people are raised that way. They're just raised, they've seen it so much that this is just my opinion. Y'all remember, this is just my opinion. They see it so much, and they see so many adults not working, not trying to fend for their kids, not trying to fend for themselves. And, there's so much turmoil going on in the world nowadays. I can't blame a lot of people for not wanting to go to work in a way, because you don't know whether you're going to be sitting behind the desk and get shot by somebody's husband or wife who came in and they're pissed off because they were cheating on them, and so you're sitting right there. You're the first one that's gonna get it. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. When I was growing up, we didn't even have free lunch. Okay. I think free lunch came out when my 50-year-old son was born. Somewhere around there in 74, something like that. I can't even remember. Because for a long, long time, I paid for my kids' lunches. And then as things got more expensive and stuff, I applied for them to get lunch at school. And then by the time they all graduated out, well, then there was breakfast. Right? But until then, I had to provide that breakfast. So as time went on, I went back to college, and it took me 9 years to get a bachelor degree because I was taking care of 5 kids, going to school, taking them to practice, taking them to ball games, making sure on the weekend I was there at the ball games. I mean, we did all this stuff. Now we have kids that don't even get fresh air half the time. And that's horrible for the kids. I know it is because I raised 5, well, let's say 4.5, that didn't deal with the games at all. And then I raised 2 that I adopted that the brother, he was on the game, he wanted to be on every day. And, because that's the way that he was doing at home, And as far as the dads out there that leave these women and do not take care of their kids. That is my sore spot. That is my sore spot. And now we even have women who do that, okay? We have women who just leave their kids with the father. Go out, they want to have a good time. They're pissed off. They got cheated on, whatever. This guy ain't satisfying them, whatever. So they do whatever, and that's their business. They can do that. But I'm just saying, you have to look at all of this stuff. You have to put all this stuff together to figure out what to be done about food stamps and about assistance and Social Security and SSI. Social Security. Most people on Social Security are lucky if they get $1,000 a month right today. Okay? 1,000. All right? Where I'm living right now, and it's not no high-class neighborhood by any means, but it's kind of, it's quiet. The rents are between $2,000 and $3,500 a month. Now, since Bert got dementia, I tried to apply for Medicaid for him because the co-pays you have to pay, even on the so-called health systems that, if you don't stay on, per se, just Medicare, and you can't afford no supplemental plan. Everybody says, oh, you get a supplemental plan, it'll take care of all your co-pays. Really? You think we can afford $500 extra a month, or $300 even a month, to get a supplemental plan? No, because we have to pay for our Medicare. It comes out of our check. And so anyway, he's had a lot of hospital bills and appointments, and then so did I. And so you're paying co-pays, you're paying to fix your car if your car breaks down, if you have it to even do that. And you have to get tires, and you have to put gas in your car, food in your stomach. I sit here online and I listen to these people talking about them having to spend $300, $400, $500 a week to eat. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I never got to do that, even when I had kids. We ate, and we ate good. Different foods. It might not be good to some people who want steak every day, or, whatever, but yeah, you learn how to go out and buy your groceries, okay? And so one day, like I said, I went to go apply for food stamps because everybody kept bugging me. Carol, you're really working too hard. You got 5 kids. They're going to be getting older pretty soon. They can get a job and help you, which is a laugh in itself, because when they grow up, they want to go out with their girlfriends and boyfriends and buy these fancy clothes that you couldn't afford for them. So, and some of them will help you, and I've had my older son and everything. People have helped. My kids have helped me, but nowadays, it's even worse. I mean, I'm sure you got some kids out there still doing it. But anyway, so I went and tried to give food stamps. Now, at the time, I was making $40 a day. I figured it out, $40 a day, and my rent was $500 a month, which in today's money, that's like, dang, that's all you were paying in Mount Prospect, Illinois? Yeah, I was. Okay. But I was only making $240 a week. I had kids that needed dental care. I had kids that needed doctor's appointments. I had kids who needed shots. They would get sick in the winter. I had to take them to the doctor. Nobody paid for my bill. I had to do that on my own. How? I have no idea. But I did. And never got a any kind of good report from their father to help me out. Let's put it that way. I think there was, because my sons have different dads. Not all of them, but 2 of them. And, well, 3 if you count my adopted son. But my youngest biological boy's father, he helped me one time, okay? And it wasn't like he was poor, I will tell you that. Was that my fault? Hell yeah, it's my fault. Just like it's a bunch of girls' faults out there now, okay? If you have a baby and you have a father out there and he's not disabled and he's old enough to work, he needs to go get a job. And he needs to pay child support. See, a lot of women let them slide, and that's what I did too. And because of that, we had to survive on the minimum of everything. Like, it was very hard to get money together for trips. You know how the schools nickel and dime you to take your kids to the zoo. And one time they took them to Orlando, and we were in Fernandina Beach, Florida, you know, and the school was taking all the kids for some kind of graduation thingy or whatever. So I had to save money as best I could, and sometimes that didn't work. I had to ask a church to help fund my son so that he could go or whatever. Yeah, so I know what it's like to be out there and not have something to eat. We were homeless. Me and my mom were homeless so many times, okay? Because she had schizophrenia. But one thing I can tell you, and I don't understand this right now, my mom took very good care of me and my brother. I don't know how she did it, because I have anxiety and panic attacks. When I get a outbreak, so to speak, I don't want to do crap. I want to sit here. I don't want nobody to bother me. It's like my heart's beating 100 miles an hour. You know, you ain't even thinking about eating. Somehow, my mom took care of us until we were 18. I don't know how. And I'm sure we took advantage of her and did a lot of things we shouldn't have did. You know, like go out and get pregnant. Yeah, that's what I did. But, yeah. So all of us have this going on with Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, AFDC, all this and that. I don't feel that anybody is entitled to it. Nobody is entitled to it. That is something that is there to get you out of a ditch when you're in it. As far as these homeless people that are out there, we had to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and do things. When I was 13, I was going to school and I was working at daily pay just to make sure that my mom had something to eat, because she would feed us and she wouldn't eat. She would drink sugar water. And she didn't tell us. We just had to find out on our own, you know. And I'm sure there's a lot of moms out there now, even with food stamps. And I don't know how I feel about this snack thing with the kids. I don't know, because the only thing that makes it bad is that kids are kids, okay? They didn't ask to be born into a family that, whether their parent wanted to work or just didn't want to work or whatever, or was disabled. They didn't ask for that, okay? But I think that it should be regulated a little bit as far as, okay, you can spend this much a month on snacks and Cokes or what have you. And that's it. That would at least give them a sense of, hey, I belong here too. You know, because I had a problem with that, because my kids, when I was sending them with lunches to school, that was before free lunches even came up. And then when free lunches came up, they didn't even want to stand in the line. They were embarrassed about it, you know. And I would tell them, you know, you should get it. I mean, I don't have the money to do it, so you should be able to do it. Why are you embarrassed? Because I don't want to do it. Nobody wants to do it. Some kids just don't say anything. I believe them. I totally believe them. Let me see where I'm at now. All I can say is if you're on Social Security, you know the same as I do that there is always more month than there is anything you need. And especially the months where you have to come up with a copay for your doctor and this and that, and you have to do this and that, and and the government may not like me when I say this, but the people who are selling them programs from every single one I've ever tried, which is not a lot, because I always believed in get your strict Medicare and that's it, because you can go anywhere, you can go, and you can use your Medicare. You can't do that with everything that you get from the government as far as health care, but it's nice to have. But we had a lot of trouble with the very first program that we had, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they didn't want to give out the medicine. They didn't want to. I don't know what the whole dealie was, but the co-pays are so high sometimes, especially if you go for a CT or an MRI, and you have to sit there and tell the lady, I can't afford to pay for that. Because one time I had to go have surgery, and I had Medicare. Yeah, and I was on Social Security. They told me, be there certain time of the morning, so I was there. They first wanted to check me in, of course. They wanted $800 cash up front before I could even get my surgery done. And it was an important surgery. I was literally in tears. My husband was waiting outside or waiting somewhere for me, either in the hall or something, till I had to go down to go to surgery. So he didn't know what was going on. The girl said, well, we got to have the $800 before we can let you go back there and get your surgery, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, then you might as well cancel it because I don't have it. So she calls this big ogre out, and he comes into the room and starts berating me for $800, okay? And don't you have somebody you could borrow it from? Don't you have somebody in your family who can come up with money? They don't want to take care of you, blah, 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 blah. So I broke out in tears. I told him to stick the surgery where the sun don't shine. And then I went outside and I called my doctor and I said, I can't have my surgery today because the people in the hospital will not even let me go back there. So I give them $800. Well, that only took 5 minutes and he was up there and I was in surgery. But I was lucky with that, and I still had to come up with payments to pay it. And how you do that, I don't know. Just imagine if you get $1,500 a month check, which I don't even get that, okay? I will tell you that. $1,500 a month is what you would have to live on if you don't do anything else. And if you're on disability, you cannot do anything else because they will cut you off disability, period. They'll find out eventually, especially with all the computers tied together and all that. But you have literally got to be on Social Security. You worked for it, it was put in your account, you're at the right age to get it, and then you can make whatever you want to. But if you can't do it, you can't do it. Because usually by the time you get Social Security, not many people can work. And I've seen 80-year-olds in Walmart pushing carts, okay? And you tend to wonder what kind of country we got. Because a lot of people take care of their relatives. They take care of their whoever. Husbands, wives, aunts, uncles. They did that before anyway, in America too. But now everything is so much Me, 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 me. And the only way that you can get out of that rut is when you are young, by staying in school or getting a vocational program of a job that pays really well, because your Social Security when you get older is based on all the time you worked from the very beginning and how much you made. So for example, I worked since I was 13, but back in the day it was $2.50 an hour you were getting, okay? $2.50. Okay, my son on the other hand, he's 50, and he's disabled now because he all of a sudden got really bad seizures. But he used to work for the port, and he was making very, very, very good money. He gets more Social Security than I do. Yeah. Because he made more than I do. Or made more than I did over his lifetime. Even though my lifetime's longer. So I'm just trying to make a point. Yes, we have people out there, they should not be getting food stamps. They should not be getting welfare. They should not. The fathers should be supporting these babies. I'm sorry. Yes, we have all these kids too that don't even have the father because they did something shady and they're in jail, or they did something else and got killed. You know, so, I mean, I'm sure that's been going on since the beginning of time, though. I mean, sometimes I sit here and say, oh my God, the world is so crazy. But you know what? It probably was even crazier back in the day. We don't know. We weren't there. But the best way for you to have a better life is to be with, first of all, your own business. That's the first way you can do better. Because you cannot make money working for somebody else unless it's a big company like Tesla, GM, Procter and Gamble, you know, one of the big conglomerates, or if you are a broker or a real estate agent, you can make money doing that. The way things are nowadays and how much money everything costs, you are not going to ever be comfortable and be able to save money unless you go to school or you find a job and stick with it. That's just my opinion. Because unless you stick with your job, and you have no idea how much crap I had to take sticking to all my jobs, okay, to feed my kids. Yeah. Because back in the day, sexual harassment, that was a joke. They did whatever they wanted to you. And you could tell anybody you wanted to tell. Nobody listened. Nobody listened. That's all. I'm going to leave it right there. But, and it didn't matter, man or woman. Okay? So, there's just so many things that I could sit here forever and talk to you guys about. But it's not going to do any good. Unless somebody gets up off their behind and does what they need to do. And when you have kids, it is very difficult to have a job, hold a job. I used to have people say, you got kids? Oh, you know, in interviews, you got kids? Who's going to stay with them when they get sick? Because, you know, you can't bring them to daycare. And hell, daycare charges a month's rent now per week to take care of kids, you know. It's ridiculous. So I really think that these mamas who are getting food, most of the mamas that are getting food stamps and welfare and all that, and they got kids, yes, you can sit there and say all you want for, they shouldn't have had so many kids, or they shouldn't have had that kid, or they're here now, you know. So, I mean, they need to better themselves. And rather than just hand out food stamps, hand out rent money and all this, because obviously we as people can't even afford rent money ourselves most of the time. I think they should get even more daycare going for kids. I think all schools should have an after-school program where teachers who want to make some extra money or something will stay until 6 o'clock and at the after-school program and watch the kids while their parents work. Now, if their parents don't work, the kid don't get in. But if their parents are working, that would be one way they could do that. But it's still hard. It's very, very hard. That's why I always tell people, think about what you're doing before you go have kids. You love all your kids, you know, but it's a big job. It's not just, okay, pushing them out. Yeah, that was hell. No, it ain't just that. They get sick. You can't go to work because they can't go to the daycare. And now we have all these other diseases running around, you know. So, if you have not had kids already, it would be a wise choice not to have any kids until you own a house. And that's just my opinion, Granny's opinion. Buy your house with a little picket fence in a decent neighborhood and then think about having babies. Because otherwise, everybody suffers. You do, the kid does. If you get in a crappy relationship and the guy does stay, he might be there beating your behind every day, but you know you can't leave because he's paying the rent. So what are you going to do? Just think about some of the things I'm saying. And I'm not sticking up for people who all get Foodstamps, Medicaid, and all that, because they turned me down for Medicaid, and my husband has dementia, you know. So I think it's like a lottery. You know, they put in a whole bowl all the names, and then they pick it out and say, oh, you can get Medicaid. But they told me if I make $2,300 a month in the household, not just me, in the household, $2,300 a month, then you can't get food stamps. None. Zero. Zilch. Okay? If you make $2,800 or more a month, you cannot get Medicaid. I don't count getting food stamps or anything else. You can't get Medicaid, period. So, but if I had a kid, I could. See, so that's the boo-boo they made, okay? But I'm a little too old to think about kids again, you know? But I'm just saying, the best thing a woman can do is get herself together while she's young. I know everybody wants to have a good time. I know everybody wants to go out. I know a lot of people want to get high. A lot of people want to drink, you know. But you better think about when you're my age, because all that crap I done back then didn't give me crap. I didn't get crap for that. And you won't either. If you live, because the drugs they have nowadays, you can't even compare to drugs in the 60s. I love when they put Woodstock up there and say, oh yeah, everybody was at Woodstock getting high. I wasn't. I wasn't. And they were getting high mostly on pot. Now, some of them did other things, okay? But I'm just saying, that little couple of years of fun that you're going to go out and have when you're young, doing things you shouldn't be doing anyway, if you last, they're not going to do a damn thing for you when you're my age. So, get your brain cooking. Somebody go watch Judge Judy from years ago where she said, you know, beauty is not forever. Trust me. Brains are forever. So remember that every time you think about doing something stupid or not getting your shit together in your life early, just think about it. Beauty is skin deep. It is. And it does not last forever. I don't care how many facelifts you get. Because then you talk like this, you can't move your lips. Nobody can even understand you. Love y'all. I hope you enjoyed my rant for today, and I hope y'all think about what I said, especially the younger folks. We'll talk at you later. Bye.